Alright guys, today is finally the day that we get to start working on installing the M3 style body kit on my 335 F30 here. Today we'll be tackling the front bumper section of the body kit. Alright, let me run you over to the garage and I'll give you a rundown of the body kit if you haven't seen my rundown in the previous video. Alright, so here is the M3 style front bumper. The paint job from Hardy's Auto Body came out absolutely beautifully. So that's the M3 style front bumper. We have M3 style side skirts, M3 style front fenders, and an M3 style rear bumper. If you want a more in-depth rundown of this kit and more information on it, check out my previous video of getting this body kit delivered and painted. But anyways, today we'll be installing this beautiful M3 style front bumper. As I always tell you guys, a lift is by no means necessary to complete this job. I will be using one today just so that I can better show you the process and all the locations of the fasteners underneath the bumper. But before I get the car too high up here, we'll jump into our first step of removing the front bumper. We need to remove this weather stripping to access some fasteners. Simply peel it up and set it aside for now. And we'll now need to remove 6 T30 fasteners on the top of the bumper here, as well as 1 T25 fastener on each side, right on top of the headlight. We'll now need to remove a series of 8 8mm screws underneath the bumper. Here's one right here. We'll also need to remove a couple of plastic rivets. There's one located right here. There's a central piece to this grommet. We're going to pull that out with a pry tool. We're just going to release the pressure and then we can pry on a larger circle of the grommet to pull it out and remove it. Regardless of whether or not your car is on a lift or on the ground, you'll want to turn in your front wheel all the way for this next step here. We'll be removing 3 more 8mm screws, one located at the bottom of the fender liner here, one towards the middle, and one more up at the top here. Now repeat the same step on the other side, of course. And I recommend using a plastic pry tool of sorts to hold the fender liner out of the way. Show you how we can do that here. Take the forked end of the pry tool, put it into one of the holes of the fender liner, and tuck the other end carefully into the inside of the bumper here as not to damage anything. Peeling back the fender liner here, we'll reveal 2 10mm screws up at the top of the bumper here. These are definitely a little bit more tricky to access. I recommend either using a flex adapter or a right angle driver to access these 2 10mm screws. Also, I just realized upon trying to remove these that in my case, they're actually 8mm screws. The OEM 10mm screws were likely replaced by a previous auto body shop, and that's going to go for almost all the screws on your car. The size may slightly vary depending on where the car was worked on and what hardware they used on the car. After repeating the same step on the other side, you want to come in here and disconnect as many of the electrical connections as you can in terms of electronics that are connected to the bumper. So that's going to include things like your fog light here, which is simply a press tab connector. Disconnect that like so. And I will quickly note that my car is equipped with park distance sensors, headlight washers, and surround view cameras. So I have pretty much every electrical option you can get on the front bumper here, which is a blessing and a curse in terms of having that nice functionality, but at the same time it's going to make this install a lot more complicated. But that's good for you guys because if you do have any of those options, I'll be showing you how to take care of those in transferring them over to the new bumper. Once you've disconnected as many of those electrical connections as you can, we can now begin removing the front bumper. I'm going to lower the car down and put a moving blanket under the front of the car as to not damage anything while we're removing this. So we can now start removing the front bumper by unclipping it right here at the top edge. Unclip it here. I'm going to go to the other side and I'm going to grab it by the kidney grills here. Slowly lower it down. And coming over to the right side, you'll have a few more electrical connections and the headlight washer plumbing to disconnect here. I'll show you quickly how to do that. It's pretty simple, quick connect style connector. We'll pull back this black collar and disconnect the headlight washer. We'll tip this hose up as to not lose all of our fluid, and I'll just tuck it right in here in the fender liner. That'll prevent our fluid from just draining out of the car. And that will release the front bumper from the car. Alrighty, so comparing the stock OEM base bumper here to the new M3 style bumper, I can see we have quite a bit of work to do here in terms of transferring over our surround view cameras here, our headlight washers, park distance sensors. I did opt to do a fog light delete because I like the look of the bumper better without fog lights, but most challenging of all is going to be figuring out how to route all this plumbing for the headlight washers, because as you can see, the stock bumper has this really nice clip system here that secures all the plumbing, and the new bumper does not seem to support that bracket whatsoever. So I'm gonna have to figure out a solution to that. But let's start with removing these surround view cameras. You'll need a T10 Torx bit to remove these cameras, and I do not recommend using an impact or drill. I recommend using a hand driver as not to damage anything. Next, I'll be removing the parking sensors, and the removal process is the same for all 4 of them. First, we'll pull back these 2 clips on this little mounting bracket to release the sensor, and then to release the sensor from the connector, you simply have to press down on this tab and release it like so. I'm by no means a software engineer or anything like that, but I do recommend keeping track of the position of each sensor and labeling them. As you can see, I labeled my sensors outer left, inner right, and outer right, so I know the correct position to install these on the new bumper. And I did the same thing with my cameras. I labeled this one right and this one left. To release this connector here, I'll be using a plastic pry tool. Now to remove our headlight washer, begin by disconnecting that quick connector on the hose. Just pull back the black collar and release the hose. Before we can remove the entire headlight washer unit, we have to remove the headlight washer cap here. So using your fingers, press it out from the inside. Grab this little piston of sorts here to keep the unit from going back in. And then using a small flathead, pry up these 2 side tabs here. You can even use your hands, just pry up that small tab, same on the other side, to release this, and then slowly lower this back into the unit. Now to release the unit, we're gonna press these 2 tabs, one on either side. We're gonna press them in towards the center of the bumper. It's best to do this with one hand, and then using your free hand to pull the unit up. To help yourself with the orientation of this cap and the unit later on, do yourself a favor and reinstall it like so. We'll now take care of removing all the plumbing and wiring, which is really simple enough. It just has these plastic clips here that we're gonna pry back and remove the wiring and hoses from. Also, as a quick note, if you are choosing to transfer over your fog lights, the removal process is very simple. You just have to remove one T25 screw right here and release the light from this hinge bracket here. All right, I just ran to Home Depot and picked some stuff up, so let me give you the rundown here. First thing I bought is a Milwaukee stepped drill bit, and ideally you want to purchase an 18mm drill bit for this job, but it's nearly impossible to find a metric drill bit anywhere around here. You have to order it online, but I found this step drill bit, which actually is just 0.5mm smaller at the 11/16 size here, so that should not be an issue for mounting up our cameras. We do have to drill the camera holes in the new M3 style bumper because not everyone's gonna have the surround view, so it doesn't come pre-drilled. The next thing I picked up is some 3M extreme mounting tape and these command clips. I'll be using this to secure our headlight washer plumbing and all the wiring to the bumper, as the new bumper did not come with a wire clip system. So I think this should work out just fine. We'll also be using this 3M extreme mounting tape to secure our camera brackets. Before we jump into installing everything on the new bumper, I want to show you everything that's included with the new bumper, starting with a license plate holder here. Obviously, I'm not going to be using that. It just makes the front bumper look ugly. But if you want to stay legal, that is included. We have our 3 front grills. As I told you earlier, I opted for a fog light delete. Those don't have holes for the fog lights. We have this plastic spacer, which I believe goes in between the new front bumper and the belly pan. We have new headlight washer brackets and new headlight washer caps here. I should have opened up the kit and looked at it a bit more before sending my bumper to paint, and I should have had these painted, but That's not a big deal. Then we have some new parking distance sensors with new adhesive, which is awesome. We have some super glue in here, I'm not entirely sure why, and some miscellaneous hardware. I'm gonna start off by installing my new park distance sensor brackets here on the new bumper. Upon opening your park distance sensor brackets here, you'll notice there are two different styles included for the front bumper. Firstly, we have these two that are a square shaped bracket and they are not angled. The other two included are a rectangular bracket and they are in fact angled. As you can see here, these ones are angled, and I'll show you on the new bumper why this is necessary. Those two angled brackets are going to be used for the two inner sensors on the front bumper here, and I'll show you why. On the stock front bumper, park distance sensors are about 6 inches off the ground here. Looking at the new bumper, you can see they're significantly higher. They're almost a foot off the ground, maybe more. So to compensate for that, we're going to use our angled bracket and angle it downwards to ensure the park distance sensors can detect anything that are down low in front of the car. Before I jump into those park distance sensors, I do need to rob 3 things off the old bumper. The first one being this little bracket in between the kidney grills. Simply pry up at the top and remove it like so. Next, I'll be removing the kidney grills by pressing it on these tabs and pressing outwards on the grills. And after doing so, I need to remove surround view camera brackets. These are secured on the bumper with some adhesive, so I'm gonna use my heat gun, heat this up, and then use a plastic pry tool to pry these off. One last thing, don't forget to take off these 2 upper brackets from your old bumper. We will be needing these for our new bumper here, so don't forget to grab both of these off your old bumper. Alright, sorry to keep coming back to the stock bumper. This is the last thing we need to pull off, I promise. It's just a couple of these metal clips. There's 3 on each side. You want to pull these off with a pair of needle nose pliers and then reinstall them on the new bumper. And now to start working on the new front bumper. First, pretty easy, we're gonna grab the bracket that we pulled off the old bumper. Simply snap it into place here. Now we can take a square, straight park distance sensor bracket and we'll install it on the outside there. So we'll take a square, straight angled parking bracket and our outer left parking sensor, click it into place here, make sure it's secure, and then we'll remove this adhesive backing. And now carefully line up this bracket with the hole in the bumper. So just insert it into that hole, clamp down on it with your hands for about 30 seconds to a minute to make sure it's well adhered. Do the same thing for the right parking sensor, and we'll repeat the same process for these 2 inner parking sensors here. We'll want to have it in this orientation here, this being the top of the bumper, so that the parking sensor is slightly angled downwards so we don't hit anything when we're parking. Also a quick note, if you're having any difficulty with this adhering well, I recommend grabbing a heat gun or hairdryer to heat up the adhesive, which should make it bond a little bit better. So we're now going to prepare the headlight washer to be installed on the bumper, and take note that I have the passenger side washer mount, and the passenger side washer cover. First step here is going to be to remove the stock cover here. Take note of the orientation. We're now going to install the unit. So to install the washer in the bracket here, take note of this little hook on one side of the washer. We're gonna want that to hook onto this back wall of the bracket. Put the washer in place, slide it down, and it should lock into place. And now by looking at these little tabs on the side of the washer here, we can install our washer cover. You may want to extend out the piston with your hand to make the job a little easier. And there we go. Then come over to the bumper with your completed washer unit, insert it into the hole here, and just make sure that it fits nicely and snugly in here with no major gaps, and that it's a flush fit all the way around. As far as mounting this up to the bumper, it's going to be the same exact process as we used for these park distance sensors. You're going to remove the adhesive backing here, apply some heat with a heat gun or hair dryer, and then carefully line this up and press it firmly to the bumper for 30 to 60 seconds. And now for the scariest part of this conversion. We have to drill holes for these surround view cameras. So I've grabbed myself a little ruler and my bracket just for reference here. Also, just a quick note before we get into this, I do highly recommend purchasing an 18mm drill bit. I measured out the old camera hole on the old bumper, and it was in fact 18mm, which, as you may or may not know, is a very uncommon drill bit size. You won't be able to find it at Home Depot or any local hardware store. You will have to special order that. I didn't know the size of the hole, so I couldn't order one in advance for this project. Closest thing I was able to find at Home Depot was this Milwaukee stepped bit. And as you can see here, 11/16 is about 17.5mm, so 0.5 millimeters smaller won't be a big deal. It should still fit just fine. So on the inside of the bumper here, you can see that the area for the camera is actually already marked out, which is very helpful. The camera is going to go in the lower of the two holes here. This hole should be 18 millimeters. So I'm going to measure out to the middle of it, 9 millimeters for our center point. All right, I've got my center point marked up here. Now comes the nerve-wracking part of drilling into our brand new bumper here, but we're just gonna take it slow and try not to make any mistakes. I'll start out with a smaller bit here to make a pilot hole, and then we'll switch over to the stepped drill bit. As I sort of expected but didn't want to tell you guys, drilling through into the paint does not work out. So definitely be sure to drill this hole before getting your bumper painted. I personally didn't know the drill bit size, so I couldn't really just take a shot in the dark, but I guess this is why I make these videos, you know. So the lesson here, drill your 18 millimeter camera hole before getting your bumper painted. That way you won't have any issues with your paint. Well, actually, as shocked as I am to say it, I take that back. I came over here to the other side, to the right side, and I drilled out my pilot hole from the inside here. And then I said, oh, maybe I should come to the outside to use my step drill bit instead of pushing outwards. And miraculously, the hole came out perfectly with no damage to the paint whatsoever. So if you are going to drill your hole after painting your bumper, be sure to drill your pilot hole from the inside and then come in from the outside with your larger bit as to not damage the paint. I'm honestly really surprised there's no peeling paint coming up, so super happy about that. I am disappointed that the other side is messed up. I'll have to figure out a way to prevent that from peeling further and introducing any moisture into the bumper. But yeah, that's why I'm making these YouTube videos, so everyone can learn from me, even if I'm making mistakes, because mistakes are the best way to learn. So that's probably the biggest takeaway from this install. So for the reinstallation of our camera, we want to take the camera and insert it into the bracket like so. Make sure it's fully inserted in the bracket here. Now we'll take some of this 3M extreme mounting tape, take about an inch here for the end, put that on there, and about another 2.5 inches for the longer end here. Now we'll just peel off the adhesive backing here, apply some heat to this adhesive, and we'll stick it right onto the bumper. So we'll get it mounted up just like that. Came out pretty beautiful, really clean. That 11/16 inch drill bit actually worked out really well. I'm super happy with the fitment. Nice tight fit here, very happy with that. All right, now that we have our park distance sensors, headlight washers, and cameras installed on the bumper, all that's left to do is to reinstall our headlight washer plumbing and the wiring for the park distance sensors. I'm gonna get the plumbing and wiring laid out in the bumper here, and I might start hooking it up to some of the parking sensors, and then I'll be using that extreme mounting tape and some clips to secure everything to the back of the bumper. Alright, so I'm just gonna shift this stuff out of the way here. I know where it's gonna be located now. I'm gonna grab my 3M extreme mounting tape and those clips and just start laying out maybe every 6 inches or so one of those clips to secure our plumbing and wiring. Alright, so this came out really nicely, very neat all the way across here, and very secure. I did place these every 6 inches. I measured it out and marked it. And to secure the end of the park distance wiring harness, I'm gonna chop off these two little rivet connectors here. So I have a flat surface to apply some adhesive to, and I'll probably stick it somewhere around here. Perfect. Alright, so we've transferred over all of our electronics, gotten that all neatened up. We just have a couple finishing touches here before we can begin installing the bumper on the car, starting with installing this plastic spacer that goes at the bottom of the bumper. Now, let me clarify what each bag of hardware is for. You're gonna receive this bag, which has these brass colored clips and 4 screws. This is gonna be used for our spacer. Now you're also gonna receive a bag with a bunch of these new 8mm screws and new clips. I presume these are replacements for the ones on the belly pan here. Just because these are a little bit rusted and worn, I am gonna pull these off and we'll be replacing the factory clips and factory screws with the ones included in the kit. Now, getting back to the spacer here, I'll show you exactly how this mounts up. This spacer's job is to eliminate a gap and to shape the bottom of the bumper. So it's gonna install right here on the bottom. And as you can see, there are 4 screw holes that line up. There's 1, 2 in the middle, and another on this end here. So we're gonna use these 4 clips and 4 screws to secure the spacer on the bumper here. So to install this, we'll take a clip and slide it onto the spacer here. You may need to use a small flathead to kind of open it up and slide it on. Once you have it on there, slide it on over that hole and repeat with the 3 remaining holes. Now I'll get this into place here, lining up those clips in the holes. Then we'll use these 4 Phillips head screws to secure it like so. Now another thing we have to prepare is removing this bar right here. We do need to remove this to make room for our new M bumper, and it's only secured by 2 bolts, except as you can see, this air vent here blocks us from accessing it. So we're gonna have to remove both air ducts on either side here. It's easier to show you on this side how we're gonna be removing it. There's 2 rivets, one at the top here and one at the bottom. And you can also see here that this is secured by an 8mm screw inside the fender liner, so we are gonna have to access in there. So we'll pull this off and remove these 2 10mm bolts to remove this bar. This next step is optional, but I'll be choosing to cut out some of this plastic here just because I like seeing the intercooler through the grill, and this kind of obstructs your view. All right, I know I just cut that out, but now come to think of it, I think I'll just remove this entire thing so we can completely see the intercooler here. Pull out my flashlight and show you best I can. There's a little tab back there. Try to get the camera to focus on it. Right there. So that plastic piece, we're gonna lift up and out of that metal notch, and that should release this entire plastic piece. Looks like that piece is also secured by a clip right back there. So we're gonna release that with a flathead and then pull out this plastic piece. Next, we need to reinstall these 2 plastic brackets on the new bumper. Pretty easy, we'll come in here. There are 2 loops that we're gonna put around these 2 posts, like so. Clip it into place, make sure it's secure, and we're all set. And last but not least, before we can throw on the front bumper, we're gonna install the center grille. The 2 side grills we'll install afterwards. Pretty self-explanatory with these clips here. We're just gonna take our grill, line up all the clips, and snap it into place. All right guys, we can finally bring this new bumper over to the car and repeat the removal process, except in reverse, of course. Bring our new bumper over here. Carefully bring it into place here and allow this top edge to rest on the car. And you do want to take note of these little clips right here. You need to slide the top of the bumper, just this little lip, right into those clips. There are 4 of them across the top of the bumper here. So that's the first step. We're going to slide them in, and then I'll reinstall just these 2 center T25 screws to hold the bumper in place while I get our electrical connections reconnected. There's also a similar concept here with the headlight. The bumper slides underneath that little bracket there to better secure it. So I just reinstalled these 2 T25 Torx screws very loosely just to hold the bumper in place here. So coming over to the passenger side here, we need to take care of reconnecting our headlight washers, our surround view camera here, and the park distance sensor connector down there. Now recall that I did say I was doing a fog light delete, so I'm probably gonna electrical tape over the fog light connector as we won't be connecting it to anything. Now that I've got my electrical connections taken care of, the first part of the bumper we wanna secure is this upper corner here with these 2 screws. We're gonna pull this around the headlight and up under the fender here, pull back our fender liner as we did before, and reinstall those 2 fasteners. Once you've got the bumper wrapped around and both corners secured, we can reinstall the 6 T30 Torx screws and the 2 T25 Torx screws. And we can now reinstall the 8mm screws underneath the bumper here. And button things up, we'll reinstall the 3 8mm screws inside the fender liner here. Now all that's left to do is to pop in our grills.
you then find someone new, baby, but you know I never will. No, so I choke you down just like a pill.
Well guys, I am stoked with how this bumper came out. It looks absolutely amazing. The fitment came out really good. I'll show you here. Oh, and the color match. I'm super impressed with Fred from Hardy's Auto Body. He did a perfect color match without even seeing the car. It looks amazing. But yeah, fitment is prime. Everything lined up perfectly, including all the holes for the fasteners, and I even got to keep my M3 style grills from my old bumper. And I'm also really happy to say that both my park distance sensors and my cameras are working perfectly as they were before. I know I'm gonna get dozens of comments from you guys, why is there no emblem on the car? I don't yet have an emblem for the bumper actually. I couldn't decide if I should go with the OEM white and blue BMW emblem, or if I should get maybe a red and black one, a completely blacked out one, or maybe even a carbon fiber one. So maybe you guys can help me make up my mind on that. Comment down below what color emblem you think I should get for this car. Also, if you haven't already, check out my previous video showing an overview of the body kit that this bumper came with, because I'll be doing an M3 style rear bumper, front fenders, side skirts, and eventually down the line I'll be doing a front lip and side skirt extensions, so definitely stay tuned for that. I would like to pay a huge thank you to Bryan from KiesMotorsports for making this project possible. Bryan is highly knowledgeable in a wide range of BMWs, and he really helped me out both in getting this kit and answering my questions with the installation. He has an awesome website with tons of parts for your BMW, so I'll definitely link that down below. Also be sure to use discount code 10% off 2019 at jd-cars.com for 10% off your entire order. Other than that, please leave a like below. It really helps us out, especially with these costly builds. And be sure to smash that subscribe button to stay tuned for this exciting build. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time on JD Cars.